So last night or this morning, depending upon whether you're a morning lark or a night owl, we gained an hour. And that always seems so funny to me when people talk about gaining an hour. We gain it in the fall, we lose it in the spring, especially because this is November and we lose the hour in March. It used to be that this happened in October and April. So it's kind of an artificial thing that we do. And we can't really gain time or lose time. So even thinking about it that way is just kind of strange. And I have heard people say that time is an illusion. There's a popular metaphysical idea that everything is happening simultaneously, that there's no past, present, and future, which is not true. And physicists who define time say that time is a measurement of how long it takes for something to happen. That it's the progress of events that occurs from something in the past that continues in the present and then goes to the future. So it's kind of intriguing to me that sometimes we can experience something in the present, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, sometimes seemingly out of nowhere, there's a memory that pops up when you're doing something in the present. And sometimes people say, you know, you have to only be in the present, but there's a reason why those memories pop up. They pop up because there's a resonance of something that happened in the past with something in the present. So even if that physical experience is not happening at the same time, there's some internal experience that's connected with the past. So it might be something like, there's someone in your present life, and we call it a trigger. They trigger some maybe pleasant or unpleasant experience you had with a parent, or a coworker, or a friend. And it's not because that other person is doing something, it's because there's something in us that we did not resolve with the previous person, and this is how karma operates. We have a repeated opportunity to learn and resolve whatever this thing is that we didn't with the person in the past. So are those two things occurring at the same time? They're not, but the same thing in ourselves, the need to understand was there in the past, it's here in the present, and if we resolve and change it, it won't be there in the future, because we'll be different. So it's kind of interesting because physicists say that time can be measured, but it can't be seen, felt, or touched. And I would agree that time can't be seen, even though we can see a clock, we're not really seeing time. I mean, if you have digital clocks, you didn't have to change them. If you have an analog clock, you actually have to change it. So what you're seeing on the clock doesn't match what we're measuring as time. I actually bought a new car 2 months ago, and it's the first time in my life I've had a car that automatically changes the time. I mean, for me, that was always like my win of the day. I relearned how to set the time in my car, so I didn't have to learn that this year. I do think that we can feel time. We have an awareness of time. So you might think about an hour, and sometimes we're doing something and it seems like that hour just sped by. Sometimes we're doing something and it feels like that hour dragged on. Or if we get really immersed in something, especially something creative, we kind of lose track of time. It seems timeless, and all of a sudden we look up and say, oh my God, I didn't realize that 2 hours passed because I was so involved in this book I was reading, or this painting I was doing, or the music I was playing. So that awareness or perception of time is a very real experience. It's not an illusion. And Jody mentioned that I was a president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. When I was in that position, we had executive committee meetings and had to arrange a time for the meeting so everybody could be there together. Well, when I was in that position, I was in Central Time. There were people on the committee who were on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and one person in Arizona, which does not change time. Then there was someone in Australia and someone in Finland. So the woman in Australia not only was a different time, she was a different day when we had the meeting. And in Europe, they do daylight savings time, but they don't do it at the same time we do. So it was very confusing to try to figure out what time are we going to have this meeting. And fortunately for those of us in this country, we could have it at a reasonable time. But to make it work, the woman in Australia needed to be at 5 o'clock her time, and the woman in Finland at 11 p.m. her time. So the point of this is that one of the reasons that we have time is to be able to have shared experiences. So not everybody always makes it on time to this service, but we do say it starts at 10:30, so everybody knows this is the time that we are going to gather and share this experience together. And usually, by this time, it's 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. Everybody's here, so good job. The Mayan calendar, which I appreciate quite a bit, is based on moon cycles rather than sun cycles, and they say that time is art. In our Gregorian calendar, people talk about time as money. And even if you think about like the words that people use to describe time, they'll say, how are you going to spend your time today on this beautiful sunny Sunday? Or they might say, is it worth your time to go see that movie? Or that was a waste of time. And all of those words about spending, worth, waste, those are the same words we use for money. So time is art. The idea of that is that the purpose of this time that we have is not to make money or even to be productive. It's to express the creative beings that we are. And what's really interesting to me about the way that the Mayans measure time, I said that their calendar is based on moons. So every 28 days is a new month, and it's the same length every month, unlike our calendar, which is pretty weird. There are some months that have 30 days, some have 31 days. February has 28, except on leap year, it has 29. And sometimes there are 2 moons in a month. We call the second moon a blue moon. So it's a very artificial kind of construct. Where with the Mayan calendar, it's 13 months, 28 days of each month, which comes to 364 days. So there's an extra day in there. And that extra day is called the day out of time. And in their culture, it's like a reset button. So the day out of time is kind of like the original idea of the Sabbath that every religious tradition has, although most people don't really celebrate a Sabbath anymore. The Mayan day out of time is a day that is for rest. It's to simply be, not to do anything. And when people have celebrations, the celebrations are always about peace. Because their belief is that when we are in harmony with the natural rhythms of the universe, which this moon calendar measurement provides, we're at peace with ourselves. And when we're at peace with ourselves, then we're at peace with each other. And I think I might have mentioned this before. Teddy Roosevelt, when he was president, actually wanted to adopt this natural time calendar because he believed that that was the way to bring about peace on earth. But it didn't fly because people thought it wasn't going to work with commerce because it wouldn't then align with how everybody else was measuring time. So I think that it could benefit all of us to incorporate some of that idea about time being art into our lives. And I think most people, they kind of view time as an enemy, like, I don't have enough time to do that. Or I've always wanted to write this book, but I don't have enough time. Or sometimes people worry about time running out in their lives. And the awareness of time, I think as we get older, changes also. You know, if you think about little kids, they don't understand time. I have a friend who has 2 daughters who now are grown, but I overheard a conversation when her younger daughter was probably 4, and they were getting ready to go somewhere, and the mom said, "Hurry up, we only have 15 minutes. And her 4-year-old said, "Mom, I don't know how to tell time. That doesn't mean anything to me." And I have another friend who has a daughter who also is grown now, and when her daughter was little, they were getting ready to go on some vacation. I think it might have been Disneyland or Disney World, and her daughter was really excited about it, and she kept saying, you know, when are we going to go? And her mom would say, in terms of sleeps, we have 3 more sleeps until we go. Because that was something that the child could understand, and it was a separation from one day to the next to sleep, which I think some of us could benefit from, because I don't know about you, but when I was in college, I actually missed some sleeps when I was staying up all night to write a paper that I had waited until the last minute to write, because at that age, I can't really say I thought I had all the time in the world, but I kind of acted like I had all the time in the world until time was running out, and so I just stayed up to make sure I got it done. Benjamin Franklin said, "If thou dost love life, then do not squander time, for that is the stuff that life is made of." And for a number of years, a friend had given me an hourglass, and with that quote on a card, and I had it on a shelf that was kind of like an altar. And it really helped me to think about time as being a resource, that it's the stuff that life is made of, and how was I going to use this stuff? So I believe that most people are aware of this resource we have, time, but I don't know how much difference that makes in terms of making the best use out of the time that we have. So I think I actually just met with a friend last night who's kind of semi-retired and approaching retirement, a very active, multi-dimensional kind of person whose brother died in February, older brother. And so he was kind of reflecting on the idea of aging, maybe dying, and how much time did he have left. So he's got long-standing genes. His mother's in her mid to late 90s. His father died when he was 94. And I think sometimes when people have that kind of history, they think, well, I'm going to live a long life also. But that's not always true. I mean, we thought my mother would live to be over 100. She had an aunt who died at 102. Her mother died at 89 and was not such a healthy person. And my mom played tennis every day. She rode her bicycle. She was cognitively all there. She was the editor of the newsletter for the retirement community she was in. And at the age of 79, she had a massive stroke and died 2 weeks later. So that was a shock, and it was not related to her genetics. And I'm not saying this to be morbid, I'm saying it because we never know how much time we have. We might have some idea, but anything can happen. And we might think that we have a short period of time, and then we find out that, you know, we get a new lease on life and we have a much longer period of time. There's actually a TV show, I can't remember if it's on Netflix or Amazon, and the main character is a woman who was diagnosed with cancer when she was a kid and was given a short period of time to live, and so that influenced everything about her life. And then she went through a treatment and got cured of cancer, and it completely reconfigured how she was going to look at her life to realize, I have a long life. I'm not going to die at the age of whatever young age she thought that she would. So I think it's important for us to realize this resource we have called time is the only thing that we really have. You know, people say all we have is the present moment. I would say all we really have is time. And we can use it however we want to. And I think it's very important to consider, what do I value? Because what I value is going to make a difference in terms of how I use this resource of time. So to me, friendship is way up there on things that I value. Relationships are up there. And so it's very important to me to spend quality time with friends and, you know, maybe even people I don't know yet who might become friends. It's important to me to do things to help people. And so it might be volunteering, it might be something simple like helping somebody carry their bags to their car if they're, you know, are loaded down with things. Just the other day I was here in the community center. I attended an exercise class and the woman in front of me dropped a tissue and it fell on the floor, and I looked at it and I thought, okay, this might be a dirty tissue. Should I pick it up? Should I not? And I thought, what the heck? I'll pick it up. And so I picked it up and looked for a garbage, and then I washed my hands. And, you know, it was a kind of dumb little thing, but it made me feel good about myself, instead of just leaving it on the floor for someone else to have to pick up. People feel like they have to be productive with their time, meaning they have to make money, they have to produce something, and those things are important. But even thinking about, why am I doing these things? You know, why am I working at this job? Is it so that I can have money to provide for my family? Is it so I can have money because I really want to go on this trip to Europe? Is it so I can have a sense of security? Is it because I want to feel like I'm making a difference in the world? I mean, these are all individual choices and questions that we can ask ourselves. And I think the more that we ask those questions and come up with answers that are meaningful to us, we can have a greater sense of peace when we go to bed at night. So I like, before I go to bed, to reflect on my day. And one of the things that, to me, makes it a good day is that I learned something. So tonight, when I reflect on my day, I'm not going to be able to say I learned how to change the clock in my car, because I didn't have to do that. But hopefully there's something else that I'll learn. You know, it might be something about the universe. Hopefully it's something about myself. It might be something about somebody else. It's important to me to see in what way I can have made a difference in someone's life, whether it's small or large. And those kinds of questions also help me to make future decisions. So a couple of weekends ago, I attended a 50th anniversary celebration of the School of Metaphysics. That I was with that organization for 40 years. And I met some people there who were current students who I'd never met before. And a few of them said to me that they read some of the books that I wrote, and two of them said, it changed my life to read that book. And that was so meaningful to me. And I have a book that's mostly written but has been lying dormant in some computer file somewhere, and the hard copy is in a box in my closet. I know where that is. And I mean, it's been there for a long time. And I have wrestled with myself about whether I'm going to actually turn it into a book. I mean, there are, I don't know how many books in the world. I would say millions, maybe millions, certainly hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Like, what difference is one more book going to make? You know, that's kind of the number I do with myself. And is it worth it to me to write it? And so when I hear that, that somebody read something that I wrote that changed their life. You know, they didn't have to say that. That inspires me to say, maybe I should write this. You know, not for myself, but because it might be able to help somebody have a better life. So, one last question that I like to ask myself when I'm reflecting on my day is, how am I different? And this is one of the ways that I know that time is not an illusion and really does exist. If I can wake up this morning and go through my day, and something that I've done or learned or experienced has changed me, then even though I'm the same being, I have the same identity basically, but if I'm different, then I know that that time has actually meant something. And that's very important to me. In fact, when I went to this reunion, I saw someone who I hadn't seen in 10 years, and he said, "Dr. Laurel, you haven't changed a bit." And I said, you know, that's not a compliment to a physician. I mean, I was joking. I know that he meant that I looked good, but I think that change is probably one of the most valuable things that we can experience. So I want to leave you with this quote from Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers is the Rogers of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. He was a minister, which I found out fairly recently, a very wise man. And he said, "You rarely have time for everything you want in this life, so you have to make choices. And hopefully, your choices can come from a deep sense of who you are."